Good evening and welcome to Iron Port here on Metropolitan Television. Iron Port is proudly brought to you by the Ghana Revenue Authority, Guel PLC, Serene Insurance, Ghana Link Network Services, Meridian Port Services, MPS, and indeed Phoenix Insurance. The show is proudly powered by the Ghana Ports and Harbours Authority-GPHA. And our media partner on this journey of a lifetime is the Business and Financial Times, the BNFT. Now, if you want to have a grasp of all that transpired on the show tonight, make a date and grab the Thursday edition on the BNFT, and you'll be able to see all that happened here on the show tonight. We are streaming live on our social media pages. On Facebook, we are live at Ghana Ports and Harbours Authority. Ghana Ports and Harbours Authority. Still on Facebook, we are streaming live at Port of Tema. And on YouTube, we are live at Iron Port Ghana. Iron Port Ghana. We shall be getting interactive with you. And so all you have to do is relax, sit back, grab your phones, and send us your messages and comments via our dedicated WhatsApp line, which is 0559019177. 0559019177. When the time is ripe and I pick signal from the production team, we shall activate the phone lines for you to call in and contribute to the discussion. My name is Kennedy Mona. We are going for a quick break. When we return, we'll continue the show. Please stay with us.
Guys, now I'm tired. I'll go on a date with whoever gets here first.
Princess, really? Okay, I come.
Shut up!
Mame, Boss, fill my tank with Super XP Raw 95.
Fill up with Super XP Raw 95 and Diesel XP high performance products from Guel.
Sorry, Tony got here first, so I'm stepping with him.
Oh, cut him. Hey, go for mommy.
Choose Super XP Raw 95 and Diesel XP for an energizing driving experience. Always go for Guel Super XP Raw 95. Guel, good energy.
Electricity, then pay your taxes. Yeah, our taxes, our future.
Because you see, without our taxes, we wouldn't have good roads, good schools, better hospitals, street lights, and other very important social amenities. When we pay our taxes, we give our children free and quality education. Talga, my money too small. Why should I pay my tax? Look, small. Salifo, it doesn't matter how small or big your business or income is. You still have to pay your taxes. The little taxes from each and every one of us, when put together, could give your community clean water or that deprived school with tables and chairs. Please pay your taxes. It is your responsibility. It is your civic duty. It is the law.
Impressive factory. If only I had listened to you, I wouldn't have been in this mess. That devastating fire virtually wiped out the whole factory and my warehouse.
Remember my misfortunes last year? Serene Insurance Asset All Risk Fire policy that I took were there to pay for my damaged stocks in the warehouse. And my machines that were affected by the flood have been replaced. My accident vehicle is back on the road thanks to Serene Insurance motor policy. Suddenly my goods are on the high seas, covered with their marine cargo insurance policy. I was just telling Ajima about Serene Insurance.
Oh, Ajima,
tell him more.
As a road contractor, I make sure I do my contractors all risk insurance
for the projects and then workers' compensation for all the workers on site. With Serene Insurance, they will make sure they will cover your unknown tomorrow today.
Serene Insurance, a new face of insurance. Call us now.
MPS Terminal 3 is Africa's new state-of-the-art container terminal at Tema Port. For manufacturers, agro-processors and traders, the new port means business can be done faster. This infrastructure boost will improve Ghana's port handling capacity, connect more trading routes, and oil the engine of growth for the economy, creating greater opportunities across all sectors as Africa's markets merge and become the largest trading bloc globally. MPS, we connect, you thrive.
Business and life can be like the sea sometimes. Sometimes serene sometimes calm, sometimes turbulent, and at times it brings the unexpected. However it is like, trust Phoenix Insurance for your home, car, business, and marine insurance needs. Call 0302 246 319 or 0243 690 492.
At Phoenix, you experience a delightful service delivered with wisdom.
All right, welcome back. We're now going to take a look at happenings in the port and shipping industry in the course of the week. And indeed, in the course of the week, the Ghana Shippers Authority held a media engagement, and they took the media through various topics, some which dwelt on negotiated freight rates, certificates of origin, and marine cargo insurance. Plus the fact that the Borderless Alliance also in the course of the week, together with the Ghana Shippers Authority, held a media launch, ahead of the 10th annual conference of the Borderless Alliance. GOIL also, in the course of the week, launched some, or commissioned, so to speak, some ultra-modern auto gas stations across the country. And the network for professional women in the port and maritime sector of West and Central Africa was also launched. The Ghana chapter was also launched in the course of the week. These and other stories we have for you. Please enjoy.
The Ghana Shippers Authority has held its 8th media seminar on shipping and logistics. The seminar, which is under the theme, Contemporary Trends and Development in Ghana's Shipping and Logistics Industry, is aimed at bringing to the fore the speedy evolvement of the shipping and logistics sector, which is one of the key drivers of the socio-economic development in the country. The media seminar also contributes to the ongoing industry-wide interventions aimed at enhancing the media's appreciation of their role in advancing the interest of the sector. In the opening remarks, the Chief Executive Officer of the Ghana Shippers Authority, Benonita Bismarck, said the authority recognizes the media as an indispensable stakeholder in its mission to effectively protect and promote the interest of shippers in Ghana.
This pivotal role of the media is not lost on us here at Shippers Authority. Consequently, as we strive to provide timely and apposite solutions to importers and exporters, we have and continue to consciously maintain a professional relationship with the media. Please be assured that we appreciate you for your yeoman's role of keeping shippers and the public informed about the shipping and logistics industry.
The president of the Ghana Journalists Association, Albert Kobana Jumfo, urged participants to use the knowledge acquired to enhance and promote economic growth so as to help transform the industry to become more competitive and cost-effective.
Trade is by far the most significant avenue to economic growth and provides an enormous opportunity to propel our economy forward. Therefore, what we can say, or what we say about the economy, will make it attractive or otherwise as journalists. How accurately we disseminate trade information as well as information on the shipping and logistics sector is critical.
A senior freight and logistics officer at the Ghana Shippers Authority, Frank Ankoma, spoke on the impact of negotiated freight rates on the shipping and logistics industry.
The freight is a very significant element of the whole chain, because if you are charged wrongly or if you pay wrongfully, your whole cost will go out. I am doing one container, maybe you have 100. So you can leverage on the volumes and say, look, this is the standard price, but I'm going to do 100. So you go in and discuss with the shipping line that based on the volumes I'm able to give you, can you do a reduction for me?
The head of export at the Ghana National Chamber of Commerce and Industry, Charles Arthur Intiri, touched on the significance of the certificate of origin in the implementation of the African Continental Free Trade Agreement.
If you are in Ghana and then you want to export to, let's say, Kenya, and you don't have any after certificate of origin, you have to pay duty, full duty. Even though the after agreement is a gradual reduction of duty. It means that if the duty is 20%, they are going to reduce it by 6% because every year you reduce it by. But if you have it, you pay, let's pay 14%.
A fellow and chairperson of the Global Membership Committee of the Institute of Chartered Shipbrokers, Gertrude Oyenisienim, explained the benefits of the payment of marine insurance locally to the shipper and the Ghanaian economy.
There's proximity to the insurer. We have over 20 general insurers in Ghana. You can choose which one you want, isn't it? Again, you can sit with the insurer or your broker for them to explain the policies and the options available. Most of the goods that are coming in are insured from port to port. Meanwhile, you can even insure from the port from origin to your warehouse.
The president of Borderless Alliance, Ziad Amui, has urged West African states to accelerate their drive towards regional economic integration in the midst of global uncertainty. This, he said, could be achieved by exploring available instruments of trade facilitation to accelerate its economic transformation and to create larger and freely accessible regional markets for its locally produced goods. Ziad Amui made this known during the media launch of the Borderless Alliance 10th Annual Conference, which comes off from October 25th to 26th at the Alisa Hotel in Tema.
There has been a visible disruption in the global supply chains in foods and fertilizer and fuel globally. And this has affected Africa in an amplified way because of its over-reliance on importation. The only way to protect itself and become more resilient is by building its regional supply chains. And to build regional supply chains, you need to focus on three things. The first one is to produce more, whether agriculture or non-agriculture products. The second is to identify markets across Africa in this case. And then the third one is logistics-based, which is to move the goods from where they are from where they are produced to where they are consumed.
He said removing regional barriers to trade and transport is critical to harnessing that growth and development to ensure that all West Africa's 300 million citizens benefit from it. The head of freight and logistics at the Ghana Shippers Authority, Fede Siedridate, disclosed that the Ghana Shippers Authority had been entrusted with the mandate of protecting and promoting the interest of shippers in Ghana, and that over the years, the authority had had a strong collaboration with the Borderless Alliance in carrying out that mandate. He observed that the economies that have thrived have done so by ensuring that there is seamless movement of goods and services across borders.
When you're talking about facilitation of trade, you're looking at, are there checkpoints along the corridor? What activities are done at these checkpoints? To what extent do they impede the movement of the cargo? And so our focus goes beyond agricultural products. And just as it would impede imported cargo, if you're bringing, say, yams from the north, and these yams are supposed to get to the port and meet with a vessel that is going, onto a global market. I mean, some buyer somewhere, and there is a checkpoint and there are delays. And you know that these yams are also perishable. So it causes great dislocation.
Borderless Alliance annual regional conferences have become one of the leading platforms on trade facilitation, regional integration, and doing business in West Africa, where participants, decision makers, and trade experts discuss how to improve their businesses and create a more enabling business environment across the region.
Ghana's leading oil marketing company, GOIL PLC, has constructed and commissioned 5 modern auto-gas stations, a first-of-its-kind initiative in West Africa. The auto-gas stations will supply LPG to automobiles, and there will be a collection and exchange center for filled cylinders. Constructed in partnership with Korean partner Yuju Engineering, the 5 stations are located in Burma Camp in Accra, Teshi, Cape Coast Bypass, Kenton Krono in Kumasi, and Takrade. And a symbolic outdooring ceremony at the Burma Camp Station in Accra, Group CEO and Managing Director of GOIL, Kwame Osei-Prempeh, stated that the construction of the stations is in line with government cylinder recirculation model policy, which aims to ensure that Ghanaians have access to safe, clean, and environmentally friendly liquefied petroleum gas.
We are telling the whole country, as well as drivers in Accra, Kumasi, Takrade, that you don't have to expose yourself to danger. Don't go and buy a cylinder filled with gas and try to transfer that to your car, you are exposing your body and your property to danger.
The director in charge of inspection and monitoring at the National Petroleum Authority, Esther Anku, said Guel's auto gas stations meet local and international standards.
I'm very happy that we are having this ceremony to showcase to the general public how a typical auto gas station going forward should look like. Under the policy, the new permits that we are granting companies to establish auto gas facilities will have an outcome like this.
On behalf of the sector minister, Deputy Minister of Energy, Andrew Ejapa-Mensah, added that Guel's move marks a significant milestone in the energy policy for the transport sector.
The expectation is that the increased access to safe outlets for the sale and purchase of auto gas in the country will translate into a gradual increase in the usage of gas-powered vehicles nationwide. In the name of the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit. Amen. Amen.
The local chapter of the Network of Professional Women in the Maritime and Port sectors of West and Central Africa has been launched, a women's arm of the Port Management Association of West and Central Africa. The network is aimed at promoting and spreading the vision of equity and unity in the maritime and port sectors through the perfect integration of women with respect to their cultural identity. President of the Ghana chapter of the network, Abna Sewo Pokufosu, said the local chapter's membership is open for all women working in the maritime industry at all levels.
We want to ensure that it's all inclusive at whichever level that you find yourself. There's the opportunity to be trained, there's opportunity to be mentored, so that together we will rise up.
Information Officer of the network, who is the General Manager in charge of administration at Ghana Ports and Harbours Authority, Florence Essel, said the network prioritizes capacity building and this culture will be maintained in the activities of the local chapter.
In the lunch, there were some sub-committees that were created. One of them is learning and development. This committee was created to identify programs that will help build the capacity of women.
Advisor of the Ghana chapter of the network and General Manager Marketing and Corporate Affairs at Ghana Ports and Harbours Authority, Esther J.B. Donko, called for deliberate effort to ensure the impact of the network and its members is felt in industry.
Your work should speak for you. And so I was encouraging them that coming up with this network and probably organizing training programs and activities does not end there. You need to make sure that you are making an impact wherever you are so that everybody can see that you are contributing to the organization. That is the essence of the visibility that I'm talking about.
Former students of the Regional Maritime University have demonstrated a desire to take advantage of every opportunity to foster unity and advocate for the common good of the university. In this vein, an interim executive committee to steer the affairs of the RMU Alumni Association for the next 6 months has been instituted ahead of an upcoming elections in 2024. This decision was arrived at during the 5th Alumni Congress of the school, following a postponement of elections initially expected to be undertaken during the Congress. 6 new members will join 5 functional members for the Interim Executive Committee. The president of the Alumni Association of RMU, Theodore Mensah, revealed that plans for representation of the Alumni Association on the board of the school is progressing. He said the association seeks to have control of funds collected by the university on behalf of the alumni body.
We need a way to put alumni funds into a central alumni bank account, while the practice of taking only small amounts into the CD account for operations continues. If we do this, I'm sure that the Alumni Association can easily start some commercially viable activities on RMU campus with the funds accruing.
Secretary of the Alumni Association, Captain Catherine Hazel, called for the development of international chapters of the Alumni Association.
Those of you who are from other countries, the member states, we would urge you to try to set up or try to establish the alumni in your home countries, Cameroon, Sierra Leone, Liberia, the Gambia, you should come on board and set up these association in your home countries so that the linkage will be there because you are a part of the alumni.
Vice Chancellor of the university, Dr. Jethro W. Brooks Jr., extended a call for experienced alumni members to consider teaching in the university.
We are in need of some lecturers in the Department of Nautical Science and the Maritime Safety and Security Center, MSSC. I therefore wish to use the medium to urge all in that area to kindly make time out of the basic schedule and render the services to the university.
Younger members of the Alumni Association urged the school to engage in activities that entice their younger members. In a related development, the Rotarats Club of RMU and the Ghana Merchant Navy Officers Association has collaborated on a cleanup campaign to reduce pollution at the beaches around the school's vicinity. However, despite the collaborative effort, the team could not do away with 10% of the accumulated plastic waste at the beaches. This has led them to appeal for future community-driven efforts towards long-term restoration of the beach environment around the school.
About 10% of the work has been done here. 90% still needs to be done. And we're calling on you, we're calling on all volunteer organizations. No matter where you fall, we're all in this together. We need to support the environment and we need to make the environment better. So join hands, let's make this better, let's make this bigger, and let's clear all this rubbish off the Anchorage Beach in Regional Maritime University.
All right, so welcome back. Those were happenings in the port and shipping industry in the course of the week. We're now going for the phrase of the day. Remember, the phrase or word of the day has been fashioned to bring you up to speed with the terminologies, jargons that we use in the shipping industry. Today's word is port capacity. Port capacity.
Port capacity generally refers to the engineered volume capacity for cargo in a port.
All right, so welcome back. We are zooming into our discussion proper tonight, and tonight we're taking a look at the closure of the Niger border and its impact on transit and cross-border trade. Indeed, we all heard what happened in neighboring Niger. That's a landlocked country that patronizes Ghana's ports, via transit trade. And some people even allude the, high cost of onion on the market to the closure of the Niger border. There are a lot of other issues that have arisen, and we have heard a lot of complaints, both to the Shippers Authority, Ghana Shippers Authority, and then the Borderless Alliance. These are two entities that you cannot take out of the equation as far as transit trade or cross-border trade in our country is concerned. So tonight we are privileged to have Mr. Fred Asiedu-Date, who is the head of the Freight and Logistics Department at the Ghana Shippers Authority in the studios. Good evening, sir, and welcome. Mr. Asiedu-Date is not a stranger to the show. He's been here several times, and so we are privileged to have him once again. And, also in the studios is Mr. Ziad Hamwi. Mr. Hamwi is the president of Borderless Alliance Ghana. He is also in the studios. He's also no stranger to the show. In fact, the two of them can be described as friends of Iron Port. Good evening, sir, and welcome.
Good evening, and thank you for having me.
Awesome. So let me begin with Mr. Asiedu-Date. I am privy to information that the Ghana Shippers Authority, since this issue started, took a lot of steps, initiatives to help ameliorate the plight of our transitors, both trackers, and the rest of those that, form the chain as far as trade in our corridor, in that particular corridor is concerned. Tell us what some of the issues were that came to your table and how come that you decided to jump onto it and then get, seek some solutions to this particular problem.
All right. Thank you very much. I think it's fair to put the discussion into perspective.
Absolutely, yes.
And it's important to underscore the fact that the Ghana Shippers Authority, as per its mandate to protect and promote the interests of shippers, and then under the auspices of the Union of African Shippers Councils, has gone ahead to sign memoranda of understanding with Burkina Faso, Mali, and Niger. And this, trusts a certain responsibility on the Ghana Shippers Authority to ensure that trade is facilitated along its corridors, particularly and in this particular case, transit trade with Burkina Faso, Mali, and Niger. And so the authority has fashioned out a number of activities to ensure that we indeed fulfill our part of the obligation that the Memorandum of Understanding spells out. You know, so in the pursuit of this agenda, we, on a regular, go on the transit corridor to ensure that, you know, the number of checkpoints are properly noted. We identify some of the challenges they face along the corridors and all. You know, all in a bid to facilitate trade, particularly transit trade to these landlord countries. And then so it didn't start off with the issue in Niger. It started off first with security along the corridor because, as you are very much aware, we had some insurgent activities, you know, along particularly Burkina Faso, the middle part of Burkina Faso, getting into Niger. Yeah. And so that case came up. We had to engage all the drivers and particularly the JAPTU, the Joint Association of Port Transport Unions, you know, to discuss how we could go around the issues. Part of the complaints were that, in fact, the insurgents had bent about 26 trucks, 18 of which were Ghanaian. And so it was quite instructive that some action needed to be taken.
Absolutely.
And on our side, one of the things we sought to do was that this was an issue that required, you know, needed to be escalated. And so we got the Ministry of Foreign Affairs involved, you know, and after a number of interactions with them, we ensured that the drivers were properly sensitized on how to get around. In fact, we also got Burkina Faso Shippers Council involved to give some guidance in terms of where the trouble spots were, and then how our drivers will not be thrown into harm's way, you know. And so those were the activities we had done before, you know, the coup in Niger hit us sometime in July. And when that happened, and following the action from ECOWAS, and I must say that there are some political dimensions to this discussion that I would, I mean,
as much as possible,
try to stay clear of those political issues. But as far as trade and transit particularly is concerned, you know, the borders were closed, as we know, and so drivers were stranded, you know. And even before the borders were closed, you know, one of the recommendations we got from the national security was to advise shippers or the truckers, hauliers, in terms of the possibility of rerouting Niger cargo to through Togo and through Benin, through the Gaia border, you know. And so that was what we did. We had to organize a whole sensitization to get the drivers to appreciate this. We got customs to make a commitment that the rerouting process was not going to be cumbersome, you know, so as to ensure that, you know, all cargo going to Niger would get to Niger without difficulty. And then some of the consignments got stuck at the border with the border closure. And so at a particular point in time, we had over 100 trucks on the Ghana side, on the Benin side, and then we also had trucks on the Niger side, you know, trying to come back down to Ghana. And this continued for a very long time. Not much has changed, again, because the borders remain closed, you know, and so that is the situation as is. Thankfully, though, and I say thankfully because, again, looking at the angle of trade facilitation, not too long ago, we got information that the military of Burkina Faso, Niger, and Mali had come together and were collaborating to ensure that you know, cargo meant for these countries, you know, were escorted even through the previously dangerous places. And so to a large extent, we are having some volumes of cargo going to Niger, and then we are having quite a few of them also coming down. But you are right in your preamble. It's impacted trade significantly. You know, one of the commodities that Ghana particularly imports from Niger is onions.
Right.
And it's impacted the onion business in Ghana significantly. Yes. I mean, only recently one gentleman speaking to a media house indicated, I mean, the gentleman who operates at Ajin Kotoku Market, was saying that on a regular they were getting about 20-25 trucks per day. But with the current development, they are getting just about 2 or 3 trucks.
So that's acute shortage, an acute shortage.
Yes, and that is what is impacting on price. Yes, in our markets. So, in effect, this is more like the background and all of the activities and the involvement of the Ghana Shippers Authority. And we are still hoping that, you know, the political actors, you know, will see eye to eye to ensure, because for us, what is important is that cargo moves from point A to point B to benefit those who need those cargoes, you know, and so that will be it.
Right. Thank you very much indeed. Awesome. Let me come to Mr. Hamui and find out from you. You have received several complaints as well. I just want to find out from you what the current state is and what type of cargo are we talking about, apart from onion, which you know predominantly comes from Niger. Like I said, and like Mr. Asidu that alluded to, that yes, you know, there's a shortage. You know, they used to, he said 25 trucks, now whittled down to just 2, you know, in a day. So tell us.
So thank you for that question. I did some research about the volumes of trade that are coming mainly in and out of Niger, based on the World Bank's WITS portal. And I came out with the following figures, because it's good to put things into perspective. Absolutely. We're talking about onion, maybe there's also livestock. Yes. We're talking about the inflow from Niger to Ghana, right? But there's also outflows, which means that Niger, Burkina, and Mali, being by definition landlocked countries, they will be completely relying on their land borders for the trade in and out of the country. Absolutely. So no one country in itself is an island. And in this case, if we take the example of Niger, their total exports amount to about $500 million annually, which means a monthly of 42 million. And then their total imports are about 2.1 billion annually. So they have a total of about 2.6 billion in and out going in, right? But that is trade in goods and in services. Now, I broke, or let's say I selected out of that total the animal trade and the food trade, which is of most interest in our case. In the case of animal trade, they have about $11.3 million of annual exports and then 61.9 million of annual imports. So it means they also import as much, close to 6 times as much as they export. And that brings it to about $6 million roughly of monthly animal trade. And then the figure for food trade is even higher, because they have about $118 million of monthly food trade. So you're talking about $124 million worth of food and agriculture and livestock in and out of Niger on a monthly basis. That is very highly disruptive for a country. And now you are no longer talking only about trade, because the discussion and the conversation has shifted horizontally more towards food security. Because, you know, trade is about creating economic opportunities and bringing in the necessities, and then creating this kind of virtuous cycle where you can create economic opportunity for people, and then you can grow your economy, and then you can grow your way into prosperity. But now, because of border closures in some countries across West Africa for various reasons, maybe in this case we're talking about Niger, but a while ago there was a pandemic that shut all of the borders within West Africa. Throughout the past 3 years, there were other countries where there was destabilization of the regimes, and then the borders were closed for a while. So this certainly affects the type of trade, and it also affects the situation not only from a trade dimension. We also have to think about the food security dimension. We have to think about the economic opportunities, especially at the border communities. And that is where from our humble experience over the past 10 years, where we found that most of the challenges of international trade reside. It's in the border communities and in the border areas, which are very wide, as you know,
Absolutely.
and are very difficult to control.
Yes.
So whether it is a sustainable drive to keep borders closed to achieve a certain objective, whether technical issues or non-technical issues, it remains to be seen whether it can be effective or not.
All right, so you mentioned 124 million of food and animal, in terms of trade.
On a monthly basis.
Yes, absolutely, to Niger. I just want to find out from you, these are the two predominantly, the two predominant trade, products that they trade in.
Just to clarify, this is not just bilateral trade between Ghana and Niger. I'm talking about Niger's trade globally.
Okay.
But then I'm saying that Ghana is one of the main gateways in and out of Niger.
So if I get you right, it means Niger exports animals and food products.
Yes,
okay.
and many other products.
Right.
So most of this trade eventually comes through the coastal countries.
Right.
And some of this cargo passes through Ghana. And the shortages of these material on the local markets in Ghana is what creates these disruptions in terms of prices.
Right.
And so, and also to shift the conversation a little bit horizontally, we are yet to see a situation where some of the countries that are facing these volatility in prices sit down and ask themselves the question about where is our sufficiency in certain strategic food items that we are consuming strategically in our countries.
Right.
Are we doing something at least to maintain a buffer or a minimum amount of manufacturing or growing our own foods? Will we continue to rely on food that is being produced elsewhere and importing, which makes our food security situation reliant and dependent on our trade partners? And that is a very difficult situation.
All right, so let's zero down to Ghana. I just want to find out from you, between Ghana and Niger, as far as transit trade is concerned, what are the common products that they trade in? For instance, Mr. Asidu that made mention of the fact that, yes, we had about 100 trucks stuck, on the Benin side, and we had several others on the Niger side. What is the nature of these, commodities? If Mr. Asidu that will step in.
Yeah, when you talk about the trade between Ghana and Niger, some of the commodities are largely salt.
Salt?
Yes.
Okay.
Rice, sugar, flour, and other. There's one very interesting one I should mention. It's tea. The one that's popularly called Atai. I recall once when they imported it, they had issues with FDA, and we had to intervene.
Right.
Because there were some after the test, there were some issues and there were some inconsistencies. So these are the key commodities that would go from this side up north to Niger. And when you look at the ones that are coming, apart from the onion, they also do millet, they do beans, they do what they call the hibiscus flour, they do a lot of groundnut as well.
Okay.
Yeah, so these are the major commodities that would come down south.
All right, so let me stay with you a bit more and try to find out from you how the closure of the Niger border has impacted trade facilitation. In your preamble, you mentioned some of them, but let's take a look at generally. How has this impacted trade facilitation?
You see,
premised on some of the complaints that you've received.
Yeah. You see, what we seek to do in trade facilitation is to ensure that if there's a consignment that is designated to a particular place, it has an unimpeded, or it makes unimpeded progress from point A to point B. With the closure, what has happened is, I mentioned already, we had a number of trucks, and I can share some videos with you of some complaints we received from the truck drivers, where because they have stayed there over months, it had rained and the salt was dissolving.
Yes.
And that the effect of that was that part of the vehicles were beginning to rust as a result of that. That is on the side. there was also the case of haulage truck drivers complaining about life at the border, because you were supposed to do a journey for, call it 7 days. And here you are 2 months, and you are stuck at the border. You know, a number of them said all of the money they had been spent. So some of the drivers' mates had to subject themselves to menial jobs, you know, to be able to survive in the space, you know. And all of those were quite challenging. In fact, I remember I said I was going to veer off the political issues, but one other thing that came as part of the complaints they gave was that, you know, it did appear that because Ghana was in support of the closure of the borders, they became an easy target, you know, to the locals, because it did appear that it's your government, you know, that is, you know, pushing this agenda of sanctions, and consequently, you know, you are part of the problem that we have in the space. I mean, so those are some of the challenges. But again, when you come to talk about the vehicle itself, I mean, if your vehicle was supposed to do a 7-day journey and is there for 2 months, you know, it's not having economic employment. You know, it's locked up. I mean, so those operators now have their capital kind of locked up. You know, that's a problem. And buyers are sitting and waiting for cargo. And if the trade was such that cargo needed to be delivered before payment was effected, then the sellers were also now, you know, in some state of, you know, I don't even know how to describe it, but that they will not be paid. You know, so all of this creates dislocations in the system.
Absolutely.
You know, that we hoped we hadn't gotten to this point.
Mr. Hamui, let me find out from you. As an advocacy group, how has the closure of the border impeded or impacted your work?
So, as you know, Kennedy, Borderless Alliance was founded on the premise of promoting the free movement of goods and people across West Africa in alignment with the vision of the ECOWAS founding fathers. Because ECOWAS itself, as a region of 15 countries, has its own free trade agreement that allows goods that are produced locally and traded across the region to move as freely as possible. And so the removal of the barriers to trade and transport is some of the areas that of the advocacy that we work on. But when borders close, in a way, it exposes the limitations of evidence-based advocacy, because now the level of the interventions is shifting higher. And as you know, borders are matters of state sovereignty.
Yes.
So it's not just an advocacy group that can step in and present an evidence that says that borders closures are effective or not effective, so that's why let's open the border or close them. It has to go to the highest level of interventions, state interventions. And so for us, it impacts our intervention because now we shift both horizontally and vertically. We shift vertically because we have to liaise with the representatives who can engage with the heads of state. In our case, for example, we have built this working relationship with the ECOWAS task force on the monitoring of the free movement of goods and people, the ETLS task force, which is currently chaired by His Excellency Dr. Evan Chambers. And so at their level, we can present the evidence-based advocacy and we can issue our recommendations, and then it gets carried forward to the leaderships of the various countries which are involved in issues not only of border closures, but pertaining to manifestations at borders that prevent the free flow of goods and people. Like a couple of weeks ago, for example, we were in Cotonou to discuss the state of affairs of the Abidjan-Lagos corridor.
Right.
And especially, and it's very significant that we are in Cotonou. Because as you know, that Benin had issues that have to do with its own borders and the transit issues that were facing the drivers moving along and transiting over there. So this is what happens when we shift our advocacy vertically, and then we shift horizontally because it is no longer about looking at the technical challenges and removing these technical challenges. Because if you keep on tackling the technical challenges without tackling the underlying reasons or the root causes of these manifestations, then you'll be as if you are sieving water with in a sea, moving from one place to the other, right? So it is no longer just an issue of advocacy and interventions. It's about presenting the case and about the various dimensions. Sometimes it's an economic dimension. Most of the time, in the case of, for example, of landlocked countries, it's the case of food security. And you know, for example, that the food security situation of the Sahel is very dire.
Right.
In April, there was a publication in the World Food Programme that Mali, Burkina, and Niger, all of them are considered as hunger hotspots,
Right.
and the hunger, or what, as they say, insufficient food consumption of more than 50%. And so this means that these three states of Mali, Burkina, and Niger are in a real threat in terms of their food security. And this doesn't remain within the realms of food security.
Right.
It sometimes degenerates into unrest, into destabilization, and then it fuels the fire of dissent across, and spills across borders. You cannot control borders when it has to do with food security or economic or socioeconomic unrest. And so these are the angles of advocacy that you widen, because you are no longer capable of presenting the evidence-based advocacy about the merits of opening or closing a border. So you have to shift horizontally and vertically.
Right. In terms of cost, have you been able to estimate how much has been lost as far as the closure of the Niger border is concerned?
Well, from the little information which I was presenting to you earlier, I mean, a closure of the border, if you are talking about monthly a bill of 219 or 220 million dollars of goods and services crossing the borders of Niger, as long as the border is closed, then you are technically referring to this amount of losses in terms of trade volumes. And then also, indirectly, an economic opportunity, because this cargo that moves has an ecosystem that serves it. There's logistics, there's freight forwarding, cargo handling, there's accommodation and hospitality services. All of these live off the logistics and the supply chains that are moving across the borders. And so the cost is really huge. We're talking about hundreds of millions of dollars as losses to the Republic of Benin because of these border closures. But remember, we are no longer talking about cost and benefits. We are talking about calculations on a different level here. As my brother Fred was saying earlier, it's no longer a technical challenge. It's a political issue. And then maybe the current leadership in Niger perceives itself in a more hostile environment. It's trying to protect its borders. You have to look at things from their own perspective, maybe. And if you look at it from the perspective of the traders and the economic operators, you might see something different. And if you also look at it from the consumer's perspective, you see things even worse. Because they are the ones who eventually bear the brunt of the total cost.
Absolutely.
When the costs increase along the supply chains, all of the service providers will keep on shifting these costs until it gets to the final consumer. And that is where the consumer pays the final cost. Whether you are based in Niger or whether you're based in Ghana, engage in trade in between Ghana and Niger, then you will eventually bear the brunt in terms of cost of livelihood.
Right. Okay, so let me come to Mr. Asiedu Datin, final from you. If you're able to decipher which section of traders, on both sides, is actually heavily impacted as far as this closure is concerned. Is it from the Ghana side or the Niger side? Are you able to tell?
Well, we don't have any study, but you can, just as I think Mr. Hamui said, I mean, once the volumes of trade go down, all the actors along the chain are affected. Yes. I mean, one of the groups that perhaps you may not even consider to be mainstream are your haulage truck drivers. I mean, they are seriously impacted because the volumes are not going. They don't have the economic opportunity to, get themselves engaged in this trade. you know. And of course, if you're going to have business that you cannot be predictable, then obviously people are not even willing to start off in the first place. You know, so I think the impact is on both sides.
Right.
As I understand, there are some shortages that are beginning to show very strongly in Niger. That is from my latest check.
Right.
You know, and I do believe that, you know, if the powers that be were to see eye to eye and start talking, perhaps the opportunities will be opened again, at least, you know, to get goods moving as we expect.
Are you willing to share with us what type of commodities are in short supply?
Well, not at this point, but the general information I received was that there are shortages.
Right.
Obviously, you know, imported commodities would be in short supply. I mean, and sometimes it doesn't take too long to find those things out. Once you go into the supermarkets, you begin to find maybe the milk, the sugar, the rice, and all the other things that have been imported are in short supply. You know, one of the other things that are imported from here is steel products from B5, you know, and obviously, like I indicated, what that means also is that construction and all the other attendant things would also slow down as a result, you know, so.
All right. So let me come to you and find out, from a general perspective, how would you describe the state of borders, you know, in our corridor?
Across West Africa? I mean, most of the borders across West Africa are currently okay. Even the Burkina Faso border with Ghana, after some unrest last year, the drivers are just using them. It's just the fact that they can't continue beyond Burkina, especially in the Liptako-Gourma area there, and beyond into Mali and Niger. That's where the problems really are. But currently, the only borders that are closed are the borders of Niger. The borders of Benin have challenges, but the challenges are not about crossing the borders.
Right.
They are actually about the transiting and the levies and charges which are yet to be agreed and discussed between the leadership of ECOWAS and the leadership of Benin as a country. As you know, so here's the thing. The problem across West Africa in general is that most of the economies are small economies. And these small economies are not resource poor. In fact, the three countries we just mentioned, Niger, Mali, Burkina, they have, I'll tell you some of the products that they export. For example, in the case of Niger, they export petroleum, uranium, gold, vegetables, and livestock. In the case of Mali, gold, cotton, fertilizer, oil, and iron. In the case of Burkina Faso, gold, cotton, phosphate, zinc, and livestock.
Right.
So these are countries that are actually engaged in productive trade. So the country is rich. However, whether these resources are trickling down to the base of the pyramid, that is something else. Because here's the thing, on the Human Development Index, Mali, Niger, and Burkina Faso are among the lowest of the low. So Burkina is the highest at the 184th position. Mali is at 186, and Niger is at 189. And so these countries that are so resource rich are faring so low on the Human Development Index. They are in a situation of food insecurity, and they have current leaderships that do not seem to be looking or sharing the same perspective as the other countries surrounding them.
Right.
And it harms economic integration. Remember that the Economic Community of West African States was founded in 1975. ECOWAS was founded on economic premises because the main drive of prosperity is economic development. But of course, you can't have economic development if you can't have peace, stability, and security. But you can't have peace and security and stability without having trade and economic development. And this is where we find ourselves in a situation where what is going on in Niger is exposing the fact that politics, security, and economics are all fused in a nexus that needs to be tackled at the highest level possible.
Right. Okay, so Mr. Asedudate, in your earlier submission, you made mention of the fact that yes, a trip that could take a transitor or a truck driver, a transporter, so to speak, 7 days, now lasts for up to 2 months, to the extent that some of them have to resort to menial jobs to survive. I just want to find out from you, when some of these things come to your attention, have you taken any steps to ameliorate the situation and to bring some relief to them as you continue to, find ways of dealing holistically with the challenge?
Yeah. Once we received the complaints, one of the first things we did was to find out how we could facilitate a rerouting from the Benin border. And in fact, in some cases, if it was possible to even get the drivers to come all the way back to source, and so that was then.
Right.
Yeah. But as I indicated in an earlier submission, I mentioned that because of the collaboration that exists currently between the military of Burkina Faso, Mali, and Niger, they are providing some escort. And so a good number of these trucks have had to reroute from the Benin border and have come all the way back, through Togo into Burkina Faso. And with the escort, they are able to get into Niger. Yeah. As I understand, it is done periodically. It is not a case where, you have the free flow of vehicles in and out. So I'm sure at a certain point the vehicles converge, and then once the escort is ready, they can provide the escort into Niger. The latest information I had was that even transit cargo from Benin is coming through this route and through this new arrangement, which to a large extent is good news, because then people get to have access to the goods they need, to survive.
Right. Okay, this is Iron Port here on Metropolitan Television, and tonight we are taking a look at the closure of the Niger border and its impact on transit and cross-border trade. With us in the studios tonight, having a discussion with Mr. Fred Asedudate, who is the head of Trade and Logistics Department, Ghana Shippers Authority, and indeed Mr. Ziad Hamui, who is the president, Borderless Alliance, Ghana. We are going for a quick break. When we return, we'll continue the discussion. Please stay with us. Yeah.
Guys, now I'm tired. I'll go on a date with whoever gets here first.
Princess, really? Okay, I come.
Shut up!
Boss, fill my tank with Super XP Ron 95.
Fuel up with Super XP Ron 95 and Diesel XP high performance products from Goyle.
Sorry, Tony got here first, so I'm stepping with him.
Oh, cut him. Hey,
choose Super XP Ron 95 and Diesel XP for an energizing driving experience. Always go for Goyle Super XP Ron 95. Goyle, good energy.
Goyle is good energy. Electricity, then pay your taxes. Yeah. Our taxes, our future.
Because you see, without our taxes, we wouldn't have good roads, good schools, better hospitals, street lights, and other very important social amenities. When we pay our taxes, we give our children free and quality education. Talga, my money too small. Why should I pay my tax? Look, small. Salifo, it doesn't matter how small or big your business or income is, you still have to pay your taxes. The little taxes from each and every one of us, when put together, could give your community clean water or that deprived school with tables and chairs. Please pay your taxes. It is your responsibility. It is your civic duty. It is the law.
Impressive factory.
If only I had listened to you, I wouldn't have been in this mess. That devastating fire virtually wiped out the whole factory and my warehouse.
Remember my misfortunes last year? Serene Insurance Asset All Risk Fire policy that I took were there to pay for my damaged stocks in the warehouse, and my machines that were affected by the floods have been replaced. My accident vehicle is back on the road thanks to Serene Insurance motor policy. Currently, my goods are on the high seas covered with their marine cargo insurance policy. I was just telling Ajima about Serene Insurance.
Oh, Ajima,
tell him more.
As a road contractor, I make sure I do my contractors all risk insurance for the projects and then workers' compensation for all the workers on site. With Serene Insurance, they will make sure they will cover your unknown tomorrow today.
Serene Insurance, a new face of insurance. Call us now.
MPS Terminal 3 is Africa's new state-of-the-art container terminal at Tema Port. For manufacturers, agro-processors and traders, the new port means business can be done faster. This infrastructure boost will improve Ghana's port handling capacity, connect more trading routes, and oil the engine of growth for the economy, creating greater opportunities across all sectors as Africa's markets merge and become the largest trading bloc globally. MPS, we connect, you thrive.
Business and life can be like the sea sometimes. Sometimes serene, sometimes calm, sometimes turbulent, and at times it brings the unexpected. However it is like, trust Phoenix Insurance for your home, car, business, and marine insurance needs. Call 0302 246 319 or 0243 690 492.
At Phoenix, you experience a delightful service delivered with wisdom.
All right, so welcome back. We're continuing the discussion. I've been told by the production team that the lines have been activated, and so you can call in and contribute. The number to dial is 020-552-8353, 020-552-8353. You can call in and contribute. Let me go into the inbox now and then see some of the messages that you have sent. This one says, "Hi, I am Port. My name is Abu, working in Tema. I can confirm some of what Mr. Asedudate said. My friends who are truckers mentioned that truly, because they were Ghanaians, they faced some animosity from our friends up north." This one says, "Hello, I am Port. Happy with the topic for discussion, even though I wish it came earlier. I heard there's an SOP, I think that's standard operating procedures, to allow goods get into Niger now. Can our experts confirm that?" No idea.
If there was, that would be a good news, and they need to share it through the official channels, because that way we can also forward it to all of the transport associations, and they have their extensive networks. They can just move it through. In fact, if I remember correctly, that was what JAP2 was trying to tell me last time when we were meeting.
Right.
And they said all we need is for them to give us a couple of weeks window for those who were on the way when whatever happened has happened, and then we were oblivious to it, and now we are at the border. So what do we do? So give us a few days so that we can cross in and then leave out with our cargo, and then that's it. And then we try to look at whatever the border crossings applies to. So the SOP would be a great development.
Right. Okay. This one says, "Hello, this is Ayarga from Tamale. I would like to know from the man from the Borderless Alliance, what's the posture of ECOWAS on the political instability in West Africa, especially how it affects the implementation of the ETLS, that's ECOWAS Trade Liberalization Scheme?"
So I think the gentleman is trying to ask about the status of the implementation of the ETLS.
Yes.
And so the answer will be quick, but it will be twofold. The first one is that when we were in Cotonou at the Abidjan-Lagos corridor at ETLS meeting, ECOWAS was giving us a presentation about the re-engineered website and procedures for the registration of the ETLS products. So there is a database that is being adjusted in real time now. and they are going to implement that across board, so it is available at all the national accreditation offices across the 15 countries, and they are rolling it out as we are speaking.
Right.
This should actually accelerate the implementation of the ETLS. However, and my second fold has to do with something we were talking about earlier, that there are some technical challenges that have to do with ETLS, and there are non-technical challenges.
Right.
And unfortunately, the lack of implementation or the lack of enforcement of the implementation of ETLS on a national level has not been a technical challenge.
Right.
It has to do with some protectionist inclinations in some smaller countries which have the impression that they are going to be a dumping ground for some of the larger countries that are much more economically capable, and so they try to find out all kinds of non-tariff barriers to throw, to throw into the international trade, to slow it down to the maximum, to frustrate traders and economic operators.
Right.
Even though the premise of ETLS was to provide local goods within the community with duty-free and quota-free treatment.
Right.
But now to register your product, and that is where the delay usually was coming. And so the idea of revamping the process was to shorten the delay. But now, even if the process has become restructured and re-engineered, we are yet to find out more information about the enforcement of the implementation of this regulation. And we as Borderless Alliance, we are working in collaboration with the ETLS task force, with the ECOWAS authorities, in order to make sure that we tackle some of the more difficult issues and challenges with the implementation of ETLS.
Right, awesome. This one says, hi, I am Port. This is Naomi in Accra. Last week on your show, you discussed transit, and I got to find out that there isn't a single border post at the border at Burkina Faso, and these delays trade. What can be done to ensure this border post is harmonized to facilitate trade?
Let me hear him again.
Yes. It says, this is Naomi in Accra. Last week on your show, you discussed transit trade, and I got to find out that there isn't a single border post at the border at Burkina Faso. And this delays trade. What can be done to ensure this border post is harmonized to facilitate trade?
Okay. So I guess what Naomi is asking is about the existence of a joint border post. Okay. So, in fact, currently we don't have a joint border post between Ghana and Burkina Faso. It has been on the drawing board for quite some time, and I think it's a good call that things are kind of expedited to ensure that the joint border post is there. Currently, the one that we have is at the Akanu place, and it's also facing its own set of issues.
Right.
But there is commitment at that level to ensure that we bring it up to speed. And so I do believe that it would also be on the agenda pretty soon to ensure that we get something going in that direction. Yeah.
Okay. So let me come to Mr. Hamui and find out from you, in terms of trade facilitation at the borders, how far have we come?
Look,
are we there yet with all these challenges?
At times, I have a feeling that we make one step forward and then we take one step backwards, and sometimes we take two steps forward and one step backward, and sometimes we keep moving in reverse. So it's a mixed bag, really, across 15 countries in West Africa. Some countries have been gaining good progress. Some countries have been consistently lagging behind the pack. And some countries still need to be supported in order to get to a decent or adequate level of trade facilitation, especially at their borders. I'm thinking here more of the western side of West Africa, Liberia, Sierra Leone, Guinea, Gambia, and Senegal. And that's an area where the border integration is not really as strong as, for example, the Abidjan-Lagos range. Abidjan-Lagos is where 65 to 70% of economic activity in West Africa is located. That is where we are building the new Abidjan-Lagos corridor highway. That is where most of the largest neighbors are, and that is a strategic port range for most of the traders and shipping lines who want to distribute across West Africa. So in these countries, trade facilitation has access to resources from the stakeholders who can invest into the structures, into the softwares, into the human resources that are required to make sure that the processes are streamlined and that the challenges are removed quickly. But there are some of the areas of West Africa where the speed of the trade facilitation intake has not been at the same level. And this brings us back to the conversation about how much are the countries producing, how large are the economies are. But then this emphasizes the need that we all have to work together towards creating one economic powerhouse where we integrate our markets and where we merge our powers into one. Because as one, we can.
Yeah.
But if we remain as 15, we are weak. Even with Nigeria, which is currently, seesawing between first position on Africa in terms of economic power and second position.
Yeah.
But even with Nigeria, you can't do it all alone. You need to move together. And that is the importance of regional integration. First of all, trading among ourselves.
Yeah.
Secondly, to open our borders. Third, to standardize the procedures of moving trade across. And fourth, is to pool our resources, our laws, our regulations, and to streamline them across in terms of investment, in terms of finance, in terms of setting up, in terms of trade, in terms of economic development, all these areas.
Yeah.
That is the importance of regional integration, basically. And if we, for example, as Borderless Alliance, only tackle the trade facilitation related aspects of the challenges and the technicalities, but there's a lot more that needs to go on in order to build the environment, the thriving environment that allows West Africa to move and to unlock its potential. Because there's potential. The potential is huge. Just a few weeks ago in Ghana, we haven't spoken about it today, but we have lithium in Ghana, and in commercial quantities.
Yes.
High-grade lithium. We have phosphate, we have so much. And that applies also to so many of the other countries. So the resources are there. The human resources are there.
Right.
Can we leverage the finance, the investment, and can we work together as a team instead of undermining each other? That remains to be seen.
Right.
And to reflect on the situation of trade facilitation.
Right, let me come to Mr. Asiedu. That in terms of the prospects for the guided trade initiative, how do you say the closure of the border has impacted the Africa Continental Free Trade, agreement or area?
Of course, I think what the AFTA seeks is to ensure that there's free movement, of goods in there, and then ensuring that, we trade, or we look inward in terms of the African countries.
Yeah.
And obviously with the border closures, that would then ensure that we don't, would not help us to contribute or achieve our objective in that regard. If, for instance, you look at the ideals of the AFTA, which is to ensure that prosperity is shared across, and that comes through trade, and if that is not going to be able to happen as a result of the border closures, then obviously we are not anywhere close to achieving our objective under the AFTA.
I think it's also very ironic the fact that the AU champion of AFCFTA was the former president Issoufou Mahamadou.
Yes.
So Niger was actually the champion of AFCFTA.
Yeah, sure.
And that is the same country that decided that they are going to close their borders to the rest of the world. And it's sad, really. But of course, we are not dabbling in politics. We are remaining into the economic realm. But we're looking at politics from an economic perspective, perhaps.
Absolutely.
And in a way, there's always an economic way out of most situations. And I think we all, in a way, agree that border closures do not give the achieved results.
Absolutely.
And I think if one thing we can learn from the closure of the borders is that they are ineffective. Even if you implement them, how rigorously can you implement a country like Niger with 5,834 kilometers of land borders? Can you really control each and every kilometer of that? We in Ghana, we are struggling with 2,442. And we only have 3 countries around them. Niger has, I think, 7.
Six.
So that's so much. Do they even have the resources to make sure that they can maintain the closure of the borders? So it's just disastrous. Border closures do not achieve the desired economic effect.
Right. You want to add something?
No.
All right. So I just want to find out from you, how do we ensure that we don't compromise security in our quest to promote trade, that's cross-border trade?
So that's a very good question, actually. Because as we were saying earlier, you can't have trade and development without having security and peace. But it goes vice versa also, because you can't have security and peace without having thriving and prosperous economies. And so I think the most important point is to look at the concerns of border communities across West Africa. Borders are where most of international trade has its challenges. So let us examine the concerns and the priorities of the border communities, and let us ensure that they benefit, first of all, from the trade flows across and the economic flows across these borders. That's one way of looking at things, to create resilient border communities. So resilience is important. And the second one, because we are talking about trade facilitation and we are talking about thriving cross-border trades, is to create the structures but also the systems that allows the trade but also allows the law enforcement to assess the risk of certain trade flows.
Right.
The fact of the matter remains that there's still too much informal trade across West Africa. But that doesn't mean that this is a symptom of lawlessness. The fact that we have informal trade across Africa in large amounts doesn't mean that it is an unlawful thing. It just means that it's under the radar. You can't capture it. You can't decide how to enhance it. You can't regulate it.
Right.
So the important thing is, first of all, to enforce the rules and the regulations internally. And the second is to create the structures to separate between the two. And I'll give you an example. In Ghana, our best example to this has to do with the police checkpoints.
Right.
And we were talking about it a few days ago. The police checkpoint is most of the time there for a security reason. But there you have a situation where in 90% or maybe more, maybe less, of cases of security checkpoints degenerate into checking your insurance or your license or your whatever it is.
The obvious complaint mostly is the fact that they are turned into points of extortion.
Thank you.
Yeah. That's basically the complaint that everybody talks about.
And so what we try to tell the Ghana police is that, look, let's work on the integrity of the units. We are all for ensuring a safe and secure environment with Ghana police, which we respect and support. But when the checkpoint agents start to misbehave, there should be something that has to be done in order to ensure that they are in check. So there are so many things that can be done.
Yes. All right, so let me come to you.
Let me just add a little to
sure.
what he said. I think the case of Ghana is quite alarming because of the complaints that we have received. You know, as I mentioned earlier, on a quarterly basis, we send some of our staff on the corridor to do fact-finding, find out how many checkpoints exist on the corridor, to find out what activity, goes on at each of those checkpoints. And the reports we have received show that about 85% of the challenges that holiday drivers have, emanates from the police. And consequently, I think there are two ways to deal with those ones. One, to ensure that we increase our patrol on the corridor. And then two, also to take the approach that the Ghana Shippers Authority has taken to sensitize the police. Because, believe you me, we have had opportunity to speak to some senior police officers in the regions. And a number of them don't seem to have any appreciation of the importance of the transit trade. Contrary to popularly held view about the transit trade, that it doesn't generate any revenues for government and all of that. We have a study that shows that about $34 million annually is generated through transit trade. And the least we can do is to frustrate that kind of trade, you know, on our corridors. And it is also important to mention, just as I think as Ziad mentioned earlier, you cannot have trade without security.
Yes.
You know, so much as we want to have, you know, the police and the other uniformed personnel on the corridor to ensure that traders are safe again, because if they are not there, you never know what, you know, opportunistic individuals may want to, you know, take advantage of the situation. And so their presence is there. But while their presence is there, we need to kind of regulate or, like, you know, curtail their actions as far as it impacts on the transit trade.
As far as,
it was actually discussed in Cotonou.
Yes, so we have barely 4 minutes to go, Mr. Hamui, but I just want to find out from you, at the last count, when the Vice President in 2017, through a caveat, issued a caveat that we should remove the checkpoints along the corridor. I think that my information as of now is that the checkpoints have even increased.
So you have to, so you have to look. You have to look at it with the proper context. And if I remember correctly, at the time, His Excellency wanted to reduce the customs checkpoints to 0.
Yes.
But then later on, after consulting with the ECOWAS protocols, they found out that we can actually afford to maintain 2.
Right.
And then in a couple of months, customs complied immediately.
Okay.
It is only the case with police where the issue of trade and security is the thorny issue, because it is no longer an issue of trade.
Is it to do with the fact that the caveat of the Vice President did not affect the police?
Because national security supersedes trade development. That is the truth of the matter, and it applies everywhere in the same way. However, my issue is not about elevating trade to supersede security. My effort is towards ensuring that the security personnel which are deployed to maintain the peace and security do not degenerate to something else and become a nuisance to economic operators, to traders, and even to innocent drivers who are moving around. I mean, I understand that you need to have security checkpoints around main cities and along the highways. We understand it. But as long as they maintain the integrity and the discipline, then no one has a problem. Why do other African countries have the ability to maintain the integrity and discipline of their units? But now we are descending down a very slippery slope, so I'll stop here, basically.
Right. Okay, so let me find out from Mr. Asidu that, is it true that we currently have some 80, if not plus, checkpoints from, you know, Tema through to Aga?
Yes, at our last count, we found 68.
68.
Yes. But you see, the number of checkpoints you have on the corridor depends on what time you did the count. Because there are a number of places, particularly in the northern part of the country, where the police would justify why they need to set up spot checkpoints.
Yes.
You know, because sometimes they have intelligence leading to some, you know, security matter.
So they hit that point, 1 hour, 2 hours, they depart.
Yes, and then they depart.
Right.
So the issue of the counting, that is why we have taken it upon ourselves to do a quarterly count. So you build a trend to see what is going on. If it's going up, you ask the relevant questions. You know. So, well, it's very difficult at any point to determine what the case is, because it changes with time and again. If you were using the corridor at night, you realize that the numbers will change. And if you're using at day, it will change, and whatever in the intelligence. So for us, what is important is that at every count, what we try to do is to establish contact with the regional police command, and then to find out if there was any reason why, you know, you have had the escalation.
Absolutely.
You know. And as I mentioned earlier, we have the blessing of the IGP to conduct regular sensitization, you know, for the police along the corridor. In fact, sometime next week or so, we are meeting with the regional officers in the Volta region, okay, because again, the Eastern Corridor is also quite significant,
right,
as far as these issues are concerned.
In 30 seconds, is there any end in sight as far as the closure of the Niger border is concerned?
It is difficult to predict, but what we want to urge is that we should put greater premium on interventions that are non-disruptive,
right,
as far as trade flows are concerned.
Right.
That is what we would urge. Yeah.
Okay, Mr. Hamui, the same question. Any end in sight?
Well, I'm optimistic that eventually they will soften the tone in order to re-engage with their neighbors. You can't remain angry at your neighbor forever. Eventually, you have to throw in, you smoke the peace pipe. And what I think is more important about this recent manifestation in Niger is that it re-emphasizes the need to build our regional supply chains. And this is actually, especially when it comes to food security. And that is why our borderless conference, which you thankfully and gratefully referred to earlier in the show, is themed this year around strengthening regional agriculture value chains to compete in a global market.
Right.
It's taking place on the 25th and the 26th in Tema at Alisa Hotel,
Yeah.
and is going to debate about how to build more sustainable and reliable agribusiness value chains.
Right. Great. Thank you very much indeed, Mr. Ziad Hamui. He's the President of Borderless Alliance Ghana. And Mr. Fred Asiedu-Date, who is the head of Freight and Logistics at the Ghana Shippers Authority. Indeed, tonight we've been discussing the impact of the closure of the Niger border on transit and cross-border trade. We say a big thanks to our sponsors: Ghana Regional Authority, Guel PLC, Serene Insurance, Ghana Link Network Services, Meridian Port Services, MPS, and indeed Phoenix Insurance. Remember, the show is proudly powered by the Ghana Ports and Harbours Authority. We'd like to say you have to watch Wednesday, that's 8:30 p.m. Ghana Television for the abridged version of Eye on Port. And we also entreat you to keep watching the rest of our programs here. And God willing, next week we shall bounce back with another wonderful edition of your favorite Eye on Port. My name is Kennedy Mona. We thank you so much for being our guest, and we shall see you next week. Have a super week ahead and enjoy the rest of our programs. Good evening.